Hey everybody, and I'm Imani, your holistic karmic life coach, and today I'm talking about the new moon in Leo on the 11th of September 2026 at 4:27 AM British summertime, and the theme of this new moon in Leo is the desert crossing, when the heart chooses endurance, strength over performance. Okay, so it's in the 25th degree of Leo on the 11th of September 2026. Then the moon enters Virgo 10 hours later at 2:39 PM British summertime, and the Natsakra is Parva Phaligi, also known as the former Reddy Swan, and it's in the Namvasa of Scorpio Mars, and the deity of this Natsakra is Bhaga, the god of material bliss, fortune and patronage. And the Sabin symbol for this 25th degree of Leo is a large camel crossing the desert. Okay, so although I'm going to talk about the aspects that the moon and the sun are making a little later on, the main aspects that are influencing this Leo new moon on the 11th of September are the moon and sun making a sextile to Mars, the moon and sun making a sexty square to Pluto, the moon and sun making a biquintile to Vesta, the moon and sun making a quinquats to Pallas, and the moon and sun making a trine to Juno, and the moon and sun making a trine to the midhaven. And the major aspect patterns involved are a T-square with Venus in Libra, Pluto retrograde in Capricorn, and Chiron retrograde in Aries at 25% orb strongness. And then we've got a grand trine between Pluto retrograde in Capricorn, Mercury in Virgo, and Uranus retrograde in Taurus. So it's the Earth grand trine. And the body part activated by the moon Sabin symbol is the pericardium, the heart's protective sac, and the fibrous shield around our cardiac tissue. So, as I said, the main theme is endurance, strength over showing off, and it isn't asking you to shine brighter, this Leo new moon. It's asking you to cross the desert carrying nothing but what's essential, trusting your capacity, your skill for endurance, strength to, keep on going over your life's adversaries, problems and challenges, rather than, putting on a performance, right? So the Sabin symbol, although I'm going to talk more about what this means and how this influenced this new moon later, a large camel crossing the desert. It's not a lion roaring, not a performer on stage, not a creative genius demanding recognition. It's a camel built for scarcity, designed for distance, crossing, terrain, the path where, spectacle, doing things for likes or trends dies, and only endurance and strength survive. So doing the things that empower you, give you strength, and can work out in the long term rather than short term goals. So what's really happening is you are being asked to choose sustainable, heart, goals that are deep within you over goals that you do to get likes, approval from others, validation. And the pericardium is activated, so it's not the heart itself, but the protection around the heart, the boundary that keeps cardiac tissue safe while it does the essential work of pumping life through your system without, anyone watching, without applause, without likes, and this is a Leo new moon, so there's still fire here. Leo is fixed fire energy. It's still creative force, still the drive, the motivation to express what's authentic, but it's happening in Parva Phaligi, part 4, the former Reddy Swan, and the Scorpio Mars Namvasa. So although Parva Phaligi is ruled by Venus, the consciousness that knows rest, pleasure, relaxation and creative rest, in part 4, that Venusian, Venus' need for easiness gets filtered through Mars' energy, the intensity, the deep boundaries and self-preservation. Being the main character and keeping your self-expression alive without, just doing things to get likes and ignoring your self-expression. You're not resting because you've earned it through achievement. You're resting because your heart, the actual organ, not the romantic metaphor, needs strategic protection to survive, heal, and keep functioning. And here's the kicker. Within 10 hours of this new moon, the moon enters Virgo. Think of it like this. Leo is the desert crossing with nothing but your camel, the camel, and your skill, your ability, your life experiences for endurance, strength. Virgo is arriving at the oasis and immediately starting to organise the water supply. Checking everyone's health, creating systems so no one has to cross the desert unprepared again. So it's looking into your life and thinking what systems, routines, daily habits you need to build into it. So, new moons are all about manifestation, so you can manifest new in your life. So the journey and the integration happen on the same day. And the aspect patterns tell the story underneath. The T-square at 25%, with Venus in Libra, Pluto in retrograde in Capricorn, and Chiron retrograde in Aries. So that's relationship wounding, Venus Pluto, identity trauma, Chiron in Aries, and structural systematic power dynamics, Capricorn energy, all locked in tension. And then we've got the grand trine at 17% activation between Pluto in retrograde in Capricorn, Mercury in Virgo, and Uranus retrograde in Taurus. And this creates a flow channel, earth signs communicating about necessary revolution in resource management, physical reality, and structural transformation of our day-to-day habits, while our wounds around being seen, being loved, being valued are screaming because of the T-square tension energy. So there's a quiet earth sign conversation happening about how to actually build sustainable long-term systems, routines that don't require you to perform your worth. The camel doesn't perform, it endures, it carries on over challenges. And endurance and strength, this new moon says, is the revolutionary act to keep on going despite the challenges, despite your obstacles. So this isn't the Leo new moon for vision boards about manifesting abundance or affirmations about stepping into your own power. This is the Leo new moon that says your heart's been working over time, trying to prove it deserves to exist, and the protection around the heart is compromised from the constant pressure to perform for the trends. And the desert crossing isn't punishment, it's the medicine, it's the healing. In the desert, there's no one watching, no one is grading your performance, just you, your skill and ability and the horizon. So, it's putting the spotlight on your personal self expression, going in and asking yourself, what do you really want in your life? What day-to-day habits? What are your goals? What needs to be given up? What do you need to do more of to take care of your heart and your other body systems, your lungs and your legs, your arms, and to move forward in your life? So if you just wanted the short version, that was it. But listen on for the layers of, where I'm going to talk about the aspects in deeper detail, and the lunar energies involved in more detail, the sabin symbols, the karmic wisdom, how you can work with this energy practically, how you can look after your health and body, also giving you some self-reflection questions to help you manage this new moon in Leo, and then finishing up with guidance for all 12 sun, moon and rising signs. So yes, stay with me. So the moon in Leo, the heart that needs to witness. So As I said, when the moon is in Leo, your emotional body craves recognition, creative expression, authentic self-display, and the experience of being seen for who you actually are and not who you pretend to be. Not who you think others need you to be, but the unrehearsed, unedited truth of yourself. Leo is the sun sign, identity, vitality, creative life force, the radiant center, and when the moon, which represents our emotional needs, subconscious patterns, sits here, you don't just feel, you need to express what you feel, ideally to an appreciative audience, people you can relate to, and this is the new moon that processes emotion through creative output, that heals through being witnessed, that finds security in authentic self-revolution, self-truth. And the gift of this Leo new moon is that it knows that being visible is the medicine, being yourself, expressing yourself, reaching your goals, rearranging your life so you can reach your goals, being seen, truly seen for who you are, not the performed version that validates your existence in ways that get social approval, but the truly seen, being appreciated for just being in the ways that private processing never quite achieves, for you to witness your joy, your pain, your creative expression. And, when someone else witnesses your joy, your happiness, your pain, your creative expression and says, I see you, your Leo moon feels safe, seen, real, and, invisible equals, you don't exist, but being seen for who you actually are, not just being seen in that kind of, invisible way where we're just being seen for likes and trends and no one's really seeing the real you. The shadow of this energy is sometimes you can perform emotion instead of feeling it. You become the audience to your own feelings, watching yourself grieve or rage or love with one part of your awareness, checking whether it looks authentic enough, dramatic enough, worthy of attention. You confuse being witnessed with being validated, and you confuse validation with worth. So this new moon happening at the 25th degree of Leo in the Sabian, symbol of the desert crossing camel, asks, what if the most revolutionary act of your heart is to keep, doing what you're doing you, your heart to keep beating when no one's watching? What if endurance and strength, not doing things for likes or trends is the real creative masterpiece, And the deity, Bhaga, which is Pava, Gagini's ruler, represents marital bliss, fortune, patronage, giving back, support, the gifts that come not from individual brilliance, but from being part of something larger. And Bhaga doesn't give awards for solo performance. He blesses union, relationship, the pleasure of shared experience. This is Leo energy filtered through Venus consciousness and, Mars, Z's and Scorpio's psychological deepness. Your heart doesn't need to prove it's special. It needs to know it's held and supported by you for being who it truly is, for you supporting yourself, your strength and your weaknesses and all in between. The camel in the Sabian symbol carries this truth literally. Camels are herd animals. That large camel crossing the desert is crossing with its herd, with its gang, with its group, with its friends. Even if the image shows one animal, it's still working with the collective, and endurance strength isn't a solo hero act, right? It's collective survival. And the Leo moon wants to be the star. This new moon says you're already essential. The herd can't cross without you, but you can't cross without the herd either. So it's putting the spotlight on how we are all connected, even with our differences. And if we heal ourselves on the individual level learning to manage our emotional, psychological and spiritual, financial and physical needs, then, we're not only helping ourselves, we're helping the collective, right? And Parva Faldellini's core meaning, as I said, this Nat Chakra represents rest, relaxation, creative rest, pleasure without guilt, and the understanding that production requires rest and balance and fun as well to live life in a balanced way. And the fig tree is the symbol of this Nat Chakra, and the fig tree gives generously but also needs long periods of dormancy, of doing nothing. And Bharga's blessing isn't constant, achievement. It's the fortune of knowing when to produce and when to rest. And the deity Bharga is often depicted as one of the 12 Ideatas, solar gods, specifically the one who rules marital happiness and the distribution of fortune. He is not the god of earning fortune through merit. He's the god of receiving your portion, your share, what's already allotted to you by cosmic order. When you're in Parva Faldellini, you're learning that some blessings aren't earned through performance. They're received through presence. Early September marks harvest season. Peak, wheat, barley, oats are all being gathered, and anything that you've grown over the summer, is being gathered. There's a saying, don't judge the crop by the height of the stalks, judge by the weight of the grain. The camel crossing the desert carries this wisdom. Size, doing things for likes or trends, impressive display, none of it matters if there's no real meaning, no substance, and no substance underneath, right? The harvest isn't about how tall the wheat grew, it's about whether the grain is full. And, in Jamaica, September sits in the hurricane season, the months when you prepare for what might come, when you secure what matters, when community becomes a survival strategy. You don't weather hurricanes alone, and you don't get through them without individual strength and endurance, right? You weather them through collective endurance, strength, shared resources, and understanding that your neighbour's roof matters as much as your own. So it's not just an individual thing, it's a collective thing. The camel crosses the desert as part of a group, and this new moon asks who's in your group, who's working with you and who are you working with. So in terms of the lunar energies, as I said, there's a T-square between Venus in Libra, Pluto retrograde in Capricorn, and Chiron retrograde in Aries. And these are structural tensions and flow channels shaping how this new moon energy moves through your life. These, the T-square and the Grand Trine are not background noise, they're very important. So the T-square between Venus in Libra, Pluto in Capricorn, and Chiron retrograde in Aries is a cardinal sign energy of action, taking action, crises management, and meeting the demands of day-to-day life, as well as your, the needs of your personal wishes and goals, and forcing you to look at the way that you can't just go with the flow and conform to traditions, and everybody else's demands right now. The T-square creates a lot of tension that demands resolution for you to do something, right? So Venus in Libra wants harmony, wants beauty, wants a relationship that feels balanced and fair, sees in her home sign strong and clear about what creates a right relationship, but she's opposed to Pluto retrograde in Capricorn, which is power, control, structural dominance, the shadow of authority. And Pluto retrograde is doing internal and demolition work on systems of power. So we're going through a lot of internal changes, inner changes on the personal individual level of how we use our power and how we have power used against us and what we think about power in general. So, in opposition to Venus, Pluto, this creates the classic dynamic, your desire for harmony versus the reality of power imbalances, and we're seeing them across the world with our day-to-day struggles and wars and stuff, Also, Pluto, Venus opposing creates tension between our need for fairness versus the truth that the game's been rigged from the start, and both of them are being squared by Chiron retrograde in Aries, the wounded healer in the sign of identity, initiation, starting things, and self, personality. And Chiron in Aries carries the wound of I don't have the right to exist as myself, or my identity is inherently flawed. And in retrograde, that wound is being re-examined, re-felt, brought to the consciousness, right? And the T-square's message is you want to be loved for who you are, which is Venus in Libra energy, but you have internalized the message that who you are isn't acceptable unless it submits to external authority, which is Pluto in Capricorn energy, and that internalization created a, fundamental wound in your sense of self, which is Chiron in Aries energy, and the empty leg, which is Cancer, Cancer here, although, the moon rules Cancer, but Cancer energy sits at the solution point, emotional safety, belonging that doesn't require performance, and home in yourself. And the 25% activation means this T-square is influencing but not dominating the chart. It's the undercurrent, right? Not the headline, or it's the undercurrent explaining why the desert crossing, the sabine symbol, feels necessary. You can't heal relationship wounds and Venus Pluto or identity trauma, Chiron energy, through more performance, more achieving, more proving. You heal it through endurance and strength, crossing the desert until you arrive at belonging that wasn't earned by anything but self-awareness, self-love, forgiveness, and self-knowing, understanding, and acceptance, not by doing whatever others want you to do so you get their validation that comes and goes if you don't do what they say. So the grand trine between Pluto retrograde in Capricorn, Mercury in Virgo, and Uranus in Taurus is an earth sign trine, as I said. So this is about the practical, the material, resource-based focus on what actually works in our physical reality. So, this new moon is wanting us to take practical action towards change, and grand trines create flow. The energy moves easily between the 3 points, sometimes too easy, creating us to be, complacent, not using it because it's so easy. But with two retrograde planets, Pluto and Uranus, this grand trine is reviewing, reassessing, revolutionizing from the inside out. And Mercury in Virgo analyzes, organizes, processes information, and creates systems. And Mercury's in its home sign wants precise, detailed work that's health focused, service orientated, and Mercury's talking to Uranus retrograde in Taurus, which is revolutionary change in our day-to-day life, our physical body, the way we use our resources, and how we express our belief and value systems. Uranus retrograde is doing internal rebellion work, wanting us to rebel against how things have always been done in our world, in our day-to-day life. And in trine to Mercury, this says your analysis of systems, your day-to-day habits, relationships, thoughts can inform, can help necessary change without creating chaos. And both Mercury and, Uranus in this grand trine, with Pluto retrograde in Capricorn, bringing deep changes in our structural world, in our nation's ways of doing things, power dynamics are being dismantled from within. Old authority structures are imploding all across the world, right? This changes. Pluto is in both the T-square, creating tension, and the grand trine, creating flow. And the grand trine's message is, while your wounds are screaming, which the T-square is making them do, there's a quiet earth sign conversation happening about how to actually build long-term sustainable new habits to help you be who you truly want to be rather than who you are told to be. And Mercury in Virgo has the data. Uranus in Taurus knows what needs to change in your physical reality, and Pluto in Capricorn is, demolishing and tearing down structures from the inside out, and together they're creating a flow channel for revolution, for change that doesn't require a dramatic, chaotic display, just constant, practical, day-to-day, earth-based transformation of your day-to-day habits and thoughts and relationship. So at 17% activation, this Grand Trine is available as a resource. It's not forcing its way forward. You have to consciously use this energy. The T-square will get your attention through pain. The Grand Trine offers solutions through practical action and the integration of this energy. The T-square says you're wounded and the wound is screaming. And the Grand Trine says, here's how to build something that doesn't reopen the wound every day. The new moon in Leo says your heart's been performing to prove it deserves protection. Stop performing and actually protect it. And the camel crosses the desert, representing endurance and strength, while the caravan carries practical supplies, Grand Trine earth wisdom. And even as individual members carry old injuries, the T-square, the Grand Trine is giving us the energy to look at these injuries and, our pain and our suffering and our identity wounds, the wounds with it being who we truly are, and make the day-to-day changes to deal with our psychological, emotional and spiritual wounds so we can be more authentic. So now I'm going to talk about the aspects that the moon and the sun are making at the time of this new moon in Leo. So the moon and the sun are making a sextile to Mars at 1:19 applying. So sextiles are 60-degree aspects that offer opportunity, support, ease with minor effort required, so they make things easier for us. And this aspect is applying, moving towards exactness, meaning Mars's energy is actively building towards supporting the new moon. And as I said, Mars represents our motivation, taking action, putting ourselves forward, asserting our boundaries, courage, and gives us the ability to fight for what matters. So the gift of this energy at the time of this new moon is our will, represented by Mars, and our heart, represented by the Leo new moon, are working together. The courage to cross the desert is accessible. The action required to protect what matters feels doable, not impossible. And this aspect says you have the strength for this journey. The endurance strength isn't hypothetical. It's in your body, in your ability and skill, waiting to be engaged. But the challenge is that sextiles need activation. They don't force themselves on you. You have to consciously choose to use Mars's support right. And if you stay in performance mode, which is Leo's shadow, Mars's energy becomes an aggressive display rather than genuine action. And if you engage the desert crossing, the Sabian medicine of the camel ride, Mars becomes the motivation for long-term effort without you, just doing things for likes or trends. You do the things that you want to do. So over the next days and weeks following the new moon, as this sextile, tightens, you're being given increasing access to the will to, do things, to keep on going on. Don't waste it fighting for recognition and approval and validation from others. Use it to cross the path, the terrains, the things, the challenges, obstacles that matter. The journey towards belonging doesn't require proof, right? And the moon and sun sextile square to Pluto, separating at 0,0,5. Semi-squares are 135-degree aspects, bringing friction, crisis, productive irritation, and Pluto represents transformation through crisis, through our life challenges, right? Power dynamics and shadow material, dealing with our psychological, spiritual and emotional wounds and the hard situations of life that we often keep buried within us, which are often the source of our, depressions, our addictions, right? And also Pluto rules death, rebirth cycles, right? And this aspect is part of the T-square aspect I talked about. So the semi-square to the new moon says your new beginning is happening in the immediate aftermath of Pluto intensity. You just got sort of like sucked into tension, demolished into thinking you may be going through pain. The court just ruled bankruptcy, which is the theme of the full moon that just happened in Capricorn, right? And the power dynamics have changed, and now, while still covered in the rubble, you're being asked to plant seeds for new creative self-expression. And the gift of this energy is the timing is precise. You don't get to rebuild the old structure. The demolition is done. Now you build something new, ideally something that doesn't require you to perform your worth to earn protection. The shadow of this energy is trying to resurrect what Pluto just killed, performing strength while still wounded, using creative display, Leo, to avoid, Pluto's underworld work of, going deep into your psyche and, acknowledging and continuing or starting the work of dealing with your emotional, psychological and spiritual wounds and addiction, self-destructive habits and thoughts and toxic relationships. So, this new moon says, even though you may still be bleeding, going through pain, start the change anyway. The camel doesn't wait until the desert is comfortable. It crosses the desert because the only way through is going through the challenges, right? The moon and the sun are making a biquintile to Vista. So biquintiles are 144 degree aspects of creative genius, unique gifts, talent that doesn't fit standard categories, and Vista represents said focus, devotional practice, and what you might imagine a priestess looking after eternal flame looks like. This aspect is applying, building towards exactness, right? So the gift is your creative life force. The Leo new moon is in, harmonious, good, creative tension with your sacred focus, Vista energy, and what you devote yourself to over, the coming weeks, and what you look after with like priestess, priest, divine light commitment is receiving support from this new lunar cycle. The biquintile says your unique genius isn't about showing off and doing things for likes or trends. Your unique genius isn't there, but it's in you being devoted to your true needs and using your inner strength and endurance to overcome your obstacles. And the camel's genius is water storage and desert adoption, adapting to the circumstances, the dryness of the desert, right? So, what's your equivalent of this? How do you adapt to your life's pressures, right? The shadow of this biquintile is that they can create a pressure to be special in a way that bypasses actual service, doing the work of change or giving back to yourself and others. And Vista wants devotion. Vista wants you to devote yourself and to commit to your life goals and changes. But Leo wants recognition. So this aspect asks, can you be devoted to what you're building, your skills, your goals, even when no one's watching? Can you look after your sacred fire, willpower, strength that doesn't care if there's an audience, even when there's not an audience, can you keep going and moving towards your goals? So we've got the moon and the sun making a quincunx to Pallas, and quincunxes are 150 degree aspects that, so that we need to change our ways of doing things, and it's an incompatibility that demands integration. And Pallas represents strategic wisdom, pattern recognition, and sort of like overcoming life's challenges by sort of like, handling situations and finding solutions. And the warrior priestess energy wants us to fight through intelligence, not violence, right? So the gift of this energy is our strategic mind that's given by Pallas, sees patterns that our heart, the Leo new moon, doesn't want to acknowledge, and the Queen Quartz creates productive discomfort. Pallas here is saying the pattern shows this, while Leo is saying, but I feel differently. The integration isn't about choosing one thing or the other, it's about letting strategy inform emotion and emotion humanize strategy. The challenge here is the Queen Quartz by nature doesn't resolve cleanly. You're being asked to hold tension between what your pattern recognition shows, Pallas energy, and what your creative heart wants to express, which is Leo new moon energy. And sometimes, the wisdom is found in the discomfort, getting outside of our comfort zones, right? Not in the resolution. So Pallas might be seeing a pattern that says you keep crossing deserts looking for an oasis, a safe space that doesn't exist, while your heart keeps hoping that, this desert will be different. Like this time I tried this old way of being, staying in a toxic relationship will be different. And the new moon asks, what if the medicine is the crossing, not the arrival, the journey? The moon and the sun also makes a trine to Juno at 7:21 applying. So this is a wide orb, it's short energy. Juno represents committed partnerships, relationships, and the contracts we make in our relationships, right? A trine is 120 degrees of easy flow and support. So even at a wide orb, this aspect shows that your partnerships, represented by Juno, can support your creative new beginning, represented by the Leo new moon, if you let them. The desert crossing doesn't have to be like a solo journey. The camel is part of a group, as I said, it can, even if you choose to do it on your own, it's still a collective journey, as I explained earlier. And wide orbs can be so easy that they're invisible. So the shadow of this energy is that you might not consciously use this energy to support your relationships, because the new moon feels like a solo journey. But Juno's saying committed partnership, not romantic necessarily, but a devotional relationship can be the water you carry through the desert. So even if it's just but the most important relationship you should be having should be with yourself, so even if you're not in a relationship with anyone else, it's about having a devotion to yourself or something higher than you. The moon and the sun also make a trine at 4:13 degree applying to the midhaven. So the midhaven represents our public identity, our career, our life direction, and the trine of the midhaven to the new moon gives us, allowing our public work, our careers and our creative work together. The new beginning you're planning or planting in your careers, maybe, in your creative life, is supported. And what you cross the desert to become can have a visible manifestation. So you may find challenges in your creative work and your career right now, but you've got the support there as well. And it's not just about internal transformation, changing within, dealing with your identity issues, healing your psychological and emotional wounds will help you with your external expression. The challenge here, though, is Leo can perform for the midhaven, for the public right, for the trends and the lights instead of serving it. The trine makes it easy to look successful while avoiding the actual desert crossing. The aspect offers support if you're genuine. It enables bypassing if you're not. To integrate this energy, these 6 aspects create a map, right? Mars gives you the strength to endure the set style energy. Pluto is allowing you to let go of what needs to be let go of. Vista focuses your devotion on what actually matters, and Pali shows you patterns your heart doesn't want to see. And Juno offers relationship support if you're willing to receive it. And your public work gets to reflect your authentic self if you're open to expressing it, right? And the camel crosses the desert, not alone, not without resources, not without purpose, and also not comfortably, right? It's not in its comfort zone, and it's not easy, and it's not being applauded. And these aspects are your group, your caravan, your energetic support, allowing you to transform as you do the walking through the changes you need to make during this new moon in Leo on the 11th of September. So in terms of the sabine symbol, the large camel crossing the desert, the 25th degree of Leo. It's not a lion, as I said, not a performer, not creative brilliance on display. A camel, boot for endurance, strength, design, for scarcity, for lack, when things aren't flowing with abundance, right? Crossing terrain where only survival matters. And camels store water in their bloodstream, fat in their humps, and can close their nostrils against sandstorms. They're not fast, they're not flashy like a lion, not impressive in the way that Leo energy usually manifests, but they cross distances that nothing else can cross, right? They survive in conditions that kill more spectacular creatures. Their genius is adapting, being flexible to their environment, right? To the lack, to the scarcity, to the lack of abundance, endurance over strength over time, and ability to carry out long journeys. So in Leo, the sign of the sun, creativity, validation seeking from the outside, right? Radiant self-expression. This symbol is revolutionary. It says the most creative act your heart can perform right now is to keep beating when no one's watching. The most radiant thing you can do is to cross the distance between who you've been performing and who you actually are. And deserts strip away everything inessential. You can't carry, performance across the desert. The weight will kill you. You can't carry image, reputation, and the need for applause. You carry water, literal life, basic provisions, the absolute minimum required for survival. The desert is both an obstacle and a teacher. It kills what's weak, it reveals what's essential. And crossing, not arriving, not departed, but in the act of crossing, in doing, in the journey, in the process, not the destination. The symbol doesn't show the camel at an oasis celebrating, it shows the camel mid-journey, doing the work of endurance, strength, one step after another through the sand that sifts and changes beneath every step, right? The camel specifically says large camel, right? Not a young one, not a small one. This is a camel that carries loads, and has done it before. This is experience, strength, and endurance, not naive optimism. The size shows capacity built over time. So it's showing you, to use the deserts you've crossed in terms of your life experience, rejection, abandonment, heartbreak and all of that. Showing you, this isn't your first obstacle, that, if you're willing to use your past experience or learn from your past experience, you know how to do this. This symbol speaks to the moment when you start performing your life and start living your life, right? When you recognize that the audience you've been playing to, whether external or internalized, isn't sustaining you anymore, isn't keeping you alive, it's straining you. When you choose endurance, strength over doing things for likes or trends, substance, over display, meaning over display and doing things for likes, actual survival over the appearance of thriving and doing well, doing it for the gram and all of that. And, as I said, the pericardium is activated, makes this literal, the protective sac around your heart has been compromised by constant pressure to perform, to prove, to sign, bright enough to earn safety, and the desert crossing is about learning that your heart doesn't need external validation to keep beating. It needs protection, real protection, not perform strength. The shadow manifestation of the Sabian symbol is making the desert crossing itself a performance, saying things like, look how strong I am crossing this desert alone. Watch me endure more than anyone else can endure and pull up with. Look at how many obstacles I can get over. Other people can't do that. And all of this, and saying things like, my suffering is more impressive than your suffering. Turning endurance strength into doing things for trends defeats the point. The camel doesn't cross the desert to be admired for crossing the desert. It crosses because that's the route to water for survival. Another shadow is believing you should be able to cross alone. Camels are group animals. The image shows one camel, but that camel is part of the caravan, right? Endurance strength isn't a solo event, it's collective survival. If you're crossing this desert with no community, no support, no caravan, that's not strength, that's unhealed wounding, pretending to be independence, right? So to integrate this energy with Parva Vagdalini energy is that, to create things you need to rest, right? The camel embodies this. It can travel days without water because it stores water during times of abundance. And the wisdom of this Natsakra is rest isn't laziness, stories isn't hoarding, preparing for life events, isn't hoarding, preparation isn't paranoia. You rest now so you can endure later. You store resources now so you can cross scarcity later and deal with lack and not having enough money and all the rest of it later. Bhaga, the deity, blesses material and marital bliss and fortune, the gifts that come from union, not individual achievements, the gifts that come from working with others. Even if you do work alone, working on yourself, improving your psychological, emotional, spiritual, physical, financial health helps the collective, right, and giving back. The large camel crosses the desert as part of a caravan. Your fortune isn't in crossing alone, it's in crossing together. Your bliss isn't in showing off and doing things for trends and achievement just on your own. It's in shared endurance, strength and collective survival and achievement. The knowledge that your group won't leave you behind. So think about what desert you are crossing, what obstacles you're crossing right now. What in your life, what situations, relationships in your life demand endurance, strength over performance? And where have you been trying to, show off and do things for likes and trends in a way that, seeks validation? And how can you do something that actually requires long-term, unglamorous commitment that doesn't gain likes, right? Something you do to reach your own goals and to, be authentic in yourself expression. This new moon plants seeds for long-term heart protection, not heart performance. Choose the crossing, right? So in terms of karmic wisdom, Parva Falingis wants us to rest before we serve, and as I said, it translates as the former red swan, the former red star, and this is Venus's domain in Leo, which creates interest in alchemy. Leo's fire and Venus's desire for easiness, right? The result isn't hedonism, just doing things for pleasure's sake only, to just get likes, right? It's understanding that creativity requires cycles of production and rest, and the deity Bhaga represents the share, the allotment that's yours by cosmic right. So you're part of, creativity, and we've all got access to that creativity. Yes, some of us do it better than others, but it's not about doing it better, being creative, but it's about expressing your creative side. And in Hindu cosmology, Bhaga is one of the 12 solar gods, specifically controlling marital happiness, good fortune, and the distributions of blessings. Like I said before, he's not the god of earning through merit, he's the god of receiving what's already yours. And in this Natsakra, Parva Vagdalini You're learning some blessings aren't earned, they're claimed. Your portion exists, your part of the abundance exists. The question is whether you will rest long enough to receive it, right? And this is Leo that needs emotional safety to sign. This is creative fire that can only burn sustainably, for a long time when the emotional space. Cancer energy, the moon rules Cancer, right, is secure, and it reminds us that you can't perform your way to emotional safety, right? You have to build it, which requires long-term plans, endurance, strength, the willingness to overcome obstacles, not just doing things for likes and trends, right? And the transition of the moon from Leo to Virgo, 10 hours after the new moon, is a literal movement from Parva Fagellini's rest domain into Uttra Fagellini's and then Hasta's energy, and that's Sakra's, right? From receiving into organising, from rest to service. The new moon timing is precise. You plant the seed of new creative expression in the hours before Virgo's practical starting phase. You rest in Parva Fagellini's energy before you serve in Virgo. The desert crossing and the Sabian symbol, right, happens in the rest phase, which sounds contradictory until you realise crossing the desert is the rest from performing. So in terms of karmic pattern recognition, you may, this may feel familiar if you've been here before, recognising I need to stop performing and start living. And Parva Fagellini says that's the loop. You keep having the insight, you rarely take the action to rest, why? Because taking the action feels like not producing, not doing things right, and not producing feels like death to a culture that measures worth by output and doing things, and then that Sakra's wisdom is production requires non-production. The fig tree, Parva Fagellini's symbol, has long dormancy. It sleeps for a long time, it rests for a long time. It's not lazy, it gathers resources for the next fruiting cycle. You're not resting, but instead of creating, you're resting to create sustainably, right? You need the rest to keep on creating over a long period of time. The camel doesn't drink water every day. It drinks deeply when water's available, stores it, then crosses the desert on reserves. That's not deprivation, that's intelligent resource management. So the shadow work of Parva Fagellini's shadow, is using rest as avoidance, saying things like I'm resting, saying it as an excuse for never engaging, using your creativity, right? Saying things like I'm protecting my energy, and this becomes a defense against ever being vulnerable enough to sign. The balance is rest that actually restores you, rejuvenates you, and you can emerge more capable of creative output, versus rest that's just comfortable stagnation and you come out the other end of the rest unchanged. And Barger doesn't give participation trophies. He gives you your allocation, your portion, your birthright of creativity, what's actually yours by right. If you've been settling for crumbs and calling it humility, or demanding the whole feast while calling it confidence, Barger says neither. Your portion is specific, sufficient, and already allocated. The question is whether you would do the crossing required to claim it. The camel crossing the desert embodies this, lives this. It's not conquering the desert, Leo ego fantasy. It's not collapsing into the sand, Leo wounded, giving up energy. It's crossing, one step, one day at a time, one step, then another, one day, then another. Trusting its skill, its ability, it stores its energy. The group it surrounds itself with, the collective, a higher power, whatever this means to you, until it reaches what's already waiting. It's there, right? So it's up to you to claim during this Leo new moon your portion, your share of abundance, your oasis, your home, which is not earned through performance. It's reached by going through your obstacles, through building your endurance, your staying power, and your strength, right? Okay, so now I'm going to talk about how you can work with this energy, the practical medicine of this energy. So before the new moon, think about, the inventory, the baggage, the emotional and spiritual, psychological wounds you're carrying, the goals you're putting off, the things that are stopping you from truly expressing yourself as you truly are. Write them down. List everything you're currently trying to maintain, relationships that require performance, jobs that demand you prove your worth daily, creative projects you're forcing because you should, self-improvement programs you're failing at, social obligations you resent. Ask of each item, is this essential cargo for the desert crossing, or is this the weight that will kill me before I reach the water? And camels can't carry unlimited water and weight, right? They're built for endurance strength, not for carrying everything. So, in this vein, you're not built for carrying everything that you're afraid to release. So look at your list. What would you leave behind if your survival depended on traveling more lighter and putting, those things down or that thing down? And, that's probably what needs releasing during the new moon at 4:27 a.m. on the 11th of September. Try within a few hours of the new moon or at the exact time to perform a simple ritual. Choose one thing from your list that's clearly non-essential weight. Write it on paper. Tear the paper and bury it in soil or burn it and say out loud, I release this weight. My heart's endurance strength matters more than this. During the new moon, from 4:27 a.m. to 2:39 p.m, this 10-hour window between Leo new moon and the moon entering Virgo is your desert crossing in miniature. Don't fill it with productivity. Don't immediately start organising. Virgo will arrive soon. Use these hours to practice endurance strength without an audience. Practically turn off phone notifications. Don't check social media. Don't document your experience for later sharing. Cross your personal desert, which might just be 10 hours of not performing your life for external validation and likes, not proving you're okay, not showcasing your journey. If you can walk in actual nature during this time, do so. Walk further than comfortable. Notice when your mind wants to quit, wants to call it good enough, wants to document the walk for social proof. Keep walking. The camel doesn't stop in the middle of the desert for photo opportunities. If physical walking isn't accessible, walk your mind through the question of, what would my life feel like if no one was watching? What would I create if no one would see it? What would I wear if there was no audience? How would I express myself if there was no audience? Who would I be if there was no audience? After the moon enters Virgo, now, at 2:39 p.m. or, the days following the new moon, now you organise the crossing right. Virgo is a practical earth sign, systems, health, service and daily routines. Use Virgo's survival to create sustainable structures for the endurance strength you just committed. Create a daily practice. Virgo loves daily practices. 20 minutes of creative work that no one will see. Writing that won't be published. Art that won't be displayed. Music that won't be performed. Cooking that won't be photographed. Movement that won't be tracked. Something your heart does purely because your heart does it, not because it generates external validation. Do this daily during, the waxing moon period from the 11th of September through to the next full moon on the 26th of September. This isn't about creating masterpieces. This is about training your heart to keep beating when no one is watching. This is, pericardium protection. The Sabian symbol rules this piece of your heart right. Building the fibrous sac around your actual creative core so it can function without needing constant external proof that it's allowed to exist. And for, the 2 weeks following the new moon, you will likely experience relationship friction caused by Venus power dynamic exposure, caused by Pluto, blocks to your self-empowerment, you're being resistant to self-empower yourself, people not wanting to respect your boundaries and stuff like that, and identity wounding, people saying things about your new self-expression or about you that can cause you more pain. And when that happens, remember the T-square solution point is Cancer, emotional safety, belonging, finding home in yourself, taking time out for positive self-care. So when relationship wounds activate, when someone doesn't see you, doesn't value you, doesn't appreciate your worth, resist the Leo impulse to perform harder, brighter, louder to gain their recognition and validation. Instead, practice the Cancer solution, saying, I belong to myself, my worth isn't determined by external validation, my heart keeps beating whether you're watching or not. The Grand Trine offers a practical support. Mercury in Virgo can analyse patterns, Uranus in Taurus can revolutionize physical reality, Pluto in Capricorn is about letting go of old power structures. Use this, asking yourself what systems, routines, relationships in your daily life reinforce the pattern of performing for validation, change them. Mercury analyzes, Uranus revolutionizes, changes things, and Pluto ensures that old routines and structures and systems don't rebuild themselves. So, in terms of what not to do, don't start new creative projects in public during the waxing moon. Don't launch the podcast, publish the novel, announce the business. This is internal building, gestation, creation, not external performance. The camel crosses the desert before it arrives at the marketplace. Cross first, survive later. Don't confuse documenting your journey with living your journey. Every photo you take, every post you make, every time you narrate your experience for external consumption, that's performance, not crossing. The desert doesn't care about social media, neither should you for the next 2 weeks. Don't try to cross the desert in hills or, for validation and external lights. Don't maintain the image, the aesthetic, the performance of having it all together while doing deep transformational work. The camel is functional, not fashionable. You're allowed to look like you're doing the hard work of change, sweating, struggling. That's called being honest, So now I'm going to talk about how you can look after your health and body at the time of this new moon. So the pericardium, as I said, is a fibrous sac surrounding your heart, protecting it from friction against other organs, maintaining its position in the chest cavity, and preventing over expansion, overgrowth, right? It's not your heart, it's the protection around your heart. This distinction is everything. The 25th degree of Leo activates the pericardium specifically. If you're experiencing chest tightness, constriction around the heart area, or isn't comfortable either, that's pericardium stress. So your protective boundaries around your actual heart are compromised, and this happens when you've been performing emotional strength, performing resilience, performing I'm fine, while your actual heart is exhausted. And the pericardium can't maintain protection when your system is on constant alert through stress and all of that and anxiety. So do your best to chill out. I know it can be hard when you medically suffer from mental health issues and that, but take time out to look after your needs. You can try placing both hands on your chest, one over the other, covering your heart area, applying gentle pressure, firm enough to feel, not hard enough to restrict breathing, and say out loud, my heart doesn't need to prove it deserves protection. It deserves protection because it's alive. Breathe deeply into the space beneath your hands. Notice if there's resistance, tightness, the feeling of armour that won't release. Don't force it, just notice. The pericardium has been working over time. It needs acknowledgement, not more demands. Do this daily for 5 minutes, ideally at the same time each day. Virgo loves routine. After all, you're literally placing your hands on the protective sac around your heart and saying you can rest. The heart will keep beating. The pericardium can soften, and it's a metaphor for how you can soften and be more gentle with yourself and more empathetic about your weaknesses and your psychological and emotional and spiritual traumas, any physical and financial traumas, and take steps, make a plan to resolve or to manage those. In terms of, if you chronically feel you always have to be doing things for likes, following trends and achieving things, chronic performance creates chronic sympathetic nervous system activation. You're always on, always ready to prove, always monitoring how you're being looked at, perceived, and this can destroy heart rate variability, HRV, the heart's ability to adapt to changing circumstances, and low HRV, rigid heart that can't adjust, can't rest, can't respond flexibly to life, is inflexible, right? And high HRV means resilient heart that can speed up for stress, slow down for rest, and adapt to what's needed. So, practice breathing exercises, maybe breathing in for 5 seconds, breathing out for 5 seconds, 5 minutes daily. And this specific rhythm, 6 breaths per minute, creates maximum HRV. It's not meditation, not relaxation, that's the word. It's nervous system training. Your heart learns, I can rest, I can be flexible, I don't have to maintain a constant high alert. The moon entering Virgo 10 hours after the new moon creates a Leo to Virgo shift, from the heart to the gut. These aren't separate systems. Everything in our body and life is interconnected. The gut-heart axis relationship is real. Vagus nerve connecting the digestive system to the cardiac system. When your gut is inflamed, your heart suffers. When your heart is stressed, digestion fails and your gut suffers, right? And the transition time in souls, that heart protection requires gut care. The heart protection, Leo energy, gut care, Virgo energy. So, any anti-inflammatory diet during the waxing moon period, the 2 weeks from the new moon to the full moon, reducing sugar, processed foods and alcohol, which cause and add to inflammation, right, can be good. Increased fermented foods like sauerkraut, fibre, bitter greens like spinach and kale are all gut healing. You're not just eating healthy, you're removing inflammation that's compromising your heart's protective sac, right? So, Leo rules the heart and circulation, as I said, and the pericardium. When it's activated, you're working with the infrastructure around circulation, not circulation itself. So check cold hands, feet, which can indicate poor circulation, spider veins, varicose veins, all of these suggest that your circulatory system has been under pressure, trying to maintain performance while under-resourced. And as I said, the camel stores water in its bloodstream. You need to store resources, rest, nourishment, food, pleasure in your system so you can cross difficult obstacles without running dry. So, you can practice your legs up the wall pose for 10 minutes daily, supports venous return, looking after your veins, reduces pressure on the heart, whole body massage if accessible, moves lymph, reduces systematic inflammation, so jumping on the rebounder or trampoline or anything else that improves circulation, alternating hot cold water and hands feet, train circulation to improve circulation, right? So there's a field called neurocardiology that studies how emotions affect heart rhythm. Fear, anger and resentment create chaotic heart patterns. Appreciation, gratitude and care create more imbalanced patterns, coherent patterns of the heart. But here's what they don't say enough. Performed appreciation, I should be grateful, creates the same chaotic pattern as resentment. Your heart knows when you're faking it, right? It knows when you're performing positivity to avoid feeling what's real. The new moon's medicine is authentic feeling, even when uncomfortable, and this creates more heart coherence, balance than perform positivity. Your heart would rather you honestly acknowledge, I'm exhausted and resentful, than perform, I'm so blessed and grateful, while, seething underneath and not, being resentful underneath. You can practice Chinese medicine. In acupuncture, the pericardium meridian middle controls emotional protection, boundaries in relationships, and the ability to give and receive love without losing yourself. When this meridian is blocked, there can be difficulty setting boundaries, emotional volatility, heart palpitations, insomnia, chest constriction. The meridian runs from the chest to the hands, right, via, your inner arm. So if you experience inner elbow pain, inner wrist sensitivity, middle finger numbness, tingling, palm heat, that's your pericardium meridian activating, right? So practice stroking your inner arm from the chest to the palm 10 times a day on each side daily. You're tracing the meridian, encouraging energy flow, saying while you do this, I protect my heart without performing protection, improves the practice, and my boundaries are real and not performed can also help as well. So in terms of questions to ask yourself, questions that help you witness any inner pain and any problems with self-expression, right? Writing these by hand, letting the pen move before your mind plans the answer is good. So you can ask before the new moon's exact, what am I carrying that's killing me slowly, but I keep calling it responsibility? If my heart didn't have to prove it deserves safety, what would it do differently? Where am I performing endurance strength instead of practicing endurance and strength? At or just after the new moon, what does my actual heart, not my performed heart, need to survive this crossing? If no one were watching my life, what would I stop doing immediately? What's the difference between my creative fire and my performed creativity? After the moon enters Virgo, as how do I organise my daily life to support actual endurance strength instead of perform strength? What systems in my routine demand I prove my worth before I'm allowed to rest? Where is my gut trying to protect my, where is my gut trying to protect what my heart couldn't? That's the one, that's what I was trying to say. And during the waxing phase, the 2 weeks between the new moon and the full moon, say today, did I create or did I perform creating? When did I choose endurance strength over doing things for likes or trends? What would the camel do? That's the literal question when facing a choice between a dramatic display of, doing things for likes and trends and long-term action and being authentic in your self-expression and doing things to support your goals. You can also do a daily practice of in the morning asking what essential cargo am I carrying today? What performance weight can I release? In the evening, ask, did my heart rest today or did it perform resting? These are not therapy, prompts. These are navigation tools to help you deal with the desert crossing, to help you deal with your authentic self-expression and finding and continuing or starting your goals. The camel doesn't journal about the journey. It focuses on the next step. So, humans, we need some map making, and these questions are the map. And, you can also ask, if Bhaga appeared today and said your portion, your abundance is ready, but you have to stop performing to receive it, what performance would you need to release, right? Answer that question honestly and all the other questions, then consider what's stopping you from being you, right? So now I'm just going to give guidance for all 12 sun, moon and rising signs. So Aries, Leo's in your 5th house, so your creative self-expression files for authenticity, what you've been performing whether it be in art, romance, children, recreation, demands actual endurance, strength. Now, the camel crosses the creative desert. Can you create when no one's clapping and giving you likes? Taurus, Leo's in your 4th house, so your home, family, emotional foundation. This is your desert. The performance of everything's fine in my family dies in the sand. What endures is actual belonging, messy and unglamorous and real. Your portion is home, your reward is home. That doesn't require performance to deserve. Gemini, Leo's in your 3rd house, so communication, learning, siblings, daily connections, your crossing. Stop performing intelligence. Stop cleverly displaying your way through conversations. What you actually know, you know. What you actually think. When no one's grading, that's the crossing, that's real, that's you. Lean into that. Cancer, Leo's in your 2nd house, so your worth, your resources, your values, the story about what makes you valuable dies in the heat. What survives, your actual skill and capacity. Like a camel's water storage, your worth, your portion, regardless of output. So, tapping into your worth or your portion of worth, your abundance and natural abundance. Leo, this new moon is in the 1st house. This is your identity, desert crossing. Who are you when no one's watching? Who are you when there's no mirror, no audience, no validation? The camel is you, built for the crossing. Even though it's not glamorous, it's not on trend. It's wanting you to be yourself, unperform, just be you. Virgo, Leo's in your 12th house, so your unconscious patterns, your hidden life, your spiritual practice. This is where the performance dies. The moon enters your sign 10 hours after the new moon. You cross the desert of hidden self-sacrifice, then arrive in your own sign, ready to organise what you went through and to reach your goals. Libra, Leo's in your 11th house of friendships, communities, social causes, your crossing. Venus in your sign in the T-square, say stop performing relationship harmony. The camel crosses through communities that demand you prove your belonging. Find the people that already know your essential cargo and that they value you. So, start performing to people who don't truly value you. Libra, Scorpio, Leo's in your 10th house, so your career, public identity, life direction. Maybe you've been performing success, performing transformation and change, performing the wise, wounded healer, while your actual heart exhausts itself. You're at burnout. So it wants you to work with what's real, not with what's performed, right? Sagittarius, Leo's in your 9th house, so your beliefs, philosophies, meaning making, long journeys. This is your path. Stop performing wisdom. Stop showing off and doing things for trends, teaching your way through uncertainty. The camel doesn't preach about the desert, it crosses it. So, finding your truth that doesn't need performance. Capricorn, intimacy, shared values, psychological deepness is your crossing at the time of this new moon. Pluto retrograde in your sign is letting go of performed power. The camel crosses through territory, through the desert where only actual skill matters. You have to remember that real power is within, not displayed and not based on validation from the external people and situations, right? Aquarius, Leo's in the 7th house of partnerships, committed relationships and one-to-one sort of like partnerships as well. The performance of I don't need anyone dies here. The camels cross in caravans and groups. So, what you need to do is relationships, take part in relationships that witness your endurance strength, not your performance, equal relationships. Pisces, Leo's in your 6th house. So daily work, health, service, routines, are your sort of like crossing where this new moon is hitting you. So start performing service, performing productivity, performing wellness while burning out. The camel's daily routine is simple. Drink when water is available, cross when crossing's required. let out your feelings when needed, overcome obstacles when needed, rest when rest is possible. Your portion is to deliver sustainable long-term service that looks after the needs of all of you, your emotional, spiritual, psychological, physical and financial Pisces, okay? So all in all, this new moon on the 11th of September gives us the imagery of the large camel crossing the desert, not quickly, not in a way that shows off, not while being photographed or motivational post about perseverance. It crosses because, the herd, its caravan, its group is moving, because the route is necessary, because endurance strength is the camel's genius, and the desert is where the genius gets proven right. This new moon on the 11th of September at 4:27 British summertime AM, right, isn't asking you to shine brighter. It's asking you to keep your heart beating when no one's watching. Cross the obstacles between the performed self and the actual self, and to choose the path between the performed self and the actual self, to choose sustainable long-term strength and endurance, keeping going through the challenges, over showing off and doing things for trends. And the pericardium, the protective sac around your heart, has been compromised from years of performance pressure. Your heart's been working overtime trying to prove it deserves to exist, and this new moon says enough. Your heart deserves protection, not because it's the best heart, the most creative heart, right, the most spectacular heart that's on trend, but because it's your heart, your self-expression, and it's alive, and that's sufficient. And within 10 hours the moon enters Virgo. You cross the Leo desert, endurance, strength without audience, then arrive in Virgo's territory, space of organised long-term systems and routines and practical habits that help you reach your goals. Plant seeds during the crossing, build day-to-day habits and structures after the arrival, because both are necessary. But remember, you can't build sustainable long-term systems until you cross the desert of performed existence and give up doing things just for trends. And the T-square between Venus, Pluto and Chiron all activate relationship wounding, power dynamics and identity trauma throughout this new moon, so you'll have to deal with tension that comes up, and I'm giving you tools to deal with that, right? But when this happens, remember, the solution isn't in the T-square's tension. The solution is in the Cancer, the empty leg. Cancer energy is missing from T-square, right? Although Cancer rules the moon, so we've got that moon energy. The Namvasa of this new moon's net chakra, emotional safety, belonging that doesn't require proof, and having home in yourself. And the grand trine between Pluto, Mercury and Uranus offers practical earth sign support. So while your wounds scream, there's a quiet conversation about how to revolutionize and change your physical reality and day-to-day habits, how to transform your life, analyze patterns and start the necessary change, engage in it. Mercury in Virgo has the data. Uranus in Taurus knows what needs changing. Pluto in Capricorn ensures the old structures and routines stay destroyed and demolished. Use this. And Parva Fadellini's deity Barga is waiting with your reward, your portion, the fortune, the blessing and marital bliss, the union with yourself, union with source, union with your actual community that's already yours. You don't earn it through performance, you claim it through crossing, through accepting it, through flowing with your emotions, by being authentic. And the desert, taking time out to ask yourself what you really want is the route, and the camel, you acknowledging your authentic self is the vehicle. Your endurance strength is the genius you've been underestimating while trying to impress everyone with talents you've been overperforming. The caravan moves at dawn at 4:27 AM on the 11th of September. The only thing to ask yourself is, are you carrying essential cargo, your relationships, your thoughts, your addictions, going through, your life habits and seeing what you need to put down? Asking yourself, are you carrying the weight of every performance you've been afraid to release? The camel can only carry so much, right? And so can you. The desert doesn't care about your CV, your resume. Your heart just needs to keep beating. Choose the crossing, choose your capacity. The portion that's yours is already waiting. It's been waiting. You just had to cross the desert where no one's watching to find it. So the last camel crosses the desert at 4:27 British Summer Time on the 11th of September. Your portion is waiting. Your heart's endurance strength is sufficient. The caravan, the group, the herd knows your essential cargo. The people that matter, know and value you and your authentic self expression, and you need to value your find and perform, use, be your authentic self. Choose the crossing, release the performance, trust in your abilities. The oasis isn't a mirage, it's the destination you can reach by actually walking instead of performing the journey for an audience that wasn't really there and doesn't really want who you truly are. So yeah, that's the end of my take on this Leo new moon on the 11th of September 2026. I'm Imani, your holistic astrological karmic life coach. It's been my pleasure. Take care and see you next time. And if you like, follow me. Take care.